in my computer. Have it started now?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So today we'll be talking about culture and mindfulness, and I mean, we both were quite intrigued with our own discussions as well when we were trying to prepare something for this, and I think that's what we'll be presenting today. What came out from our discussions and what we thought was something very interesting about when thinking about this, about different cultures. So yeah, so today we'll talk about why are we even interested in talking about this topic, mindfulness and culture. And then we'll be talking about specific root words from which mindfulness, the current definition, has been derived. So it has been derived from Sati in Sanskrit, or Pali and Nian.
Yeah, I think that's the Chinese pronunciation. I do not know, but it's Nen in Japanese.
Yeah, so it's Nen in Japanese.
Yeah.
And so we'll be talking about both of these, and then embedded in this would be how mindfulness is conceptualized within these two different cultures, because we are from different cultural backgrounds. So we just thought that we are not really capable of talking about all the cultures in the world, but just about ours, and we can start from there.
Yeah, just to add, so the word Sati, as you probably or might know, people argue that it's basically the origin, as Bonnie said, of the current, modern English term mindfulness. But that's basically, where, or the, Sanskrit, the Nepal, India area basically is where, Buddha was born, and the kind of earlier Buddhism evolved, and then a couple hundred years and centuries later, the evolved versions of Buddhism were brought to China, then to Korea, then all the way to Japan, and sorry, and by then, by the time it reached to China, Korea, and Japan, the word Sati kind of was translated into at the time of ancient Chinese language, which was then kind of translated-ish to the Japanese language as well. So that's basically kind of the background of why we're talking about that specific thing. It's basically the same word as Sati, but translated in Chinese/Japanese at the time.
Okay, so starting with why are we talking about mindfulness and culture? I just thought that maybe we can look at how culture is defined. So I just have put this definition from, it was from a webpage of one of the professors from Texas A&M University, although he was in a very different department of, I think, architecture, and studying probably architecture of different cultures or something. But he had these different definitions of culture put up, and this was, I thought, was a very succinct definition. So that's why I just picked this up, which is culture is the systems of knowledge shared by a relatively large group of people. And then he also, I think he probably has the information from some a particular reference paper, which I can also share later. But I really like this brief visualization of culture, which included different, it is this macro system, which includes values, rituals, heroes, and symbols. And these and all of these things are embedded or can be seen in the different practices or behaviors of people in a particular region or nation. So symbols would usually can also refer to language or words. And heroes are usually these role model or figures which people talk about in stories, and I kind of identify with them, that we want to be like them. Then rituals would be very specific traditions, which are practices. I just thought that they are also somewhat symbolic, because those particular practices or traditions can be related to, can be symbolic of certain core values that are the part of the culture. So at the core of everything, there are these values or value systems, which every culture represents, and it could be different for different places. And then, so mindfulness, as we know today, is the definition which is most widely accepted, is the one given by John Kabat-Zinn. And he says that it is the state of awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So when I was thinking about this definition, I thought that it has a lot of things, and it looks very simple because it's just one statement with different phrases. But each of these phrases probably represents a lot more than just like what we understand from common conceptualization of these words. And in order to understand these things, it might be important to understand why he gave this particular definition, or where this definition or the understanding of the word mindfulness came from, and what are, like, if it is inspired or not really inspired, but yeah, like what are those cultural, there might be cultural meanings associated with different terms, and that is why it might be important to understand it more holistically, that what it means. Also, this one professor from McGill University, I think, I don't remember his name, but he had an editorial article which was very interesting. I think that could be an article which we all can read together and then discuss. And it was about transcultural psychiatry, and why it is important to understand or take cultures into context, especially in case of mindfulness practices. And some of the things that he concluded were that during transmission or translation of different terms, there could be a loss in terms of the goals, methods, and the messages that were initially conveyed. And it could be in terms of different ethics or morals or pragmatism. And then it is important to think that if it's a practice like mindfulness, then does it convey the essential background knowledge which is needed for the practice to achieve its purpose? And so, I mean, I think the mindfulness as we know it today, or the way it is studied, it always depends on the purpose it is serving. And especially because it is widely used in different applications which have different purposes, like to reduce stress or to enhance well-being, or it could have different goals. So that is why it is important to think about, like, what is the purpose of this practice, and do we have the background knowledge to understand that purpose while understanding the term. And also because all practices, including mindfulness, are social and are implemented in social contexts. That is why it is important to look at the entire culture or cultural background of understanding where a practice is coming from and what all it represents. Otherwise, there could be this disconnect between the practice and community. Like, while people are actually practicing in their community, they might not feel that it is representing their values, maybe, or that they could, the actual benefits that are anticipated might not come out if we don't understand it from the cultural background as well. Okay, so coming back to this definition, and also having talked about how it is derived from these different root words, which is Sati or Nian in Chinese. Sati is it's a word in Pali language. And okay, so now I think at least I will be talking a lot about history. And I mean, it is very interesting to learn about how the culture developed, or cultural values, what do they mean or represent. And that is why I thought that when we look at history, then it's yeah, it becomes easier to understand. So Pali, so okay, so Sati is the word which in Pali language means to remember, but now when it gets translated to mindfulness, how did that transformation occur? Like from to remember, it became to be in the present, and all the other things about the definition of mindfulness. So in order to understand that, probably it's interesting to look at what Pali in itself means, because Pali, usually languages get named from their regions of origin, but there is no region called Pali or have a related name. So then what does the word Pali actually mean? And like when this is, I think, one of something from Buddhist text, that Pali was brought here and there is no other commentary. So Pali was something that was brought to something, like to a place. And so I got these screenshots from one of the videos on Pali language origins and history. And then, so there it said that it can have different meanings as interpreted by different people. And some of them are here, which is that Pali could mean a line or row. And this is the word called bhasha, which is the literal translation is speech, dialect, or language. So bhasha is also used in Hindi, and it's usually used for representing language. So Pali bhasha is the language of the text that way. Or in other interpretations, it could also mean to be read aloud. Pali could mean to read aloud. And that is why then it could be interpreted as the verses for recital, something that has been recited, or the knowledge that has been recited. Or there is another interpretation, which is from the Sanskrit root word called pa, and that means to preserve. And therefore, it could be interpreted as the language of preservation. But in all of these meanings of the Pali bhasha, what are we actually talking about? Like, what is being preserved, or what is this language of the texts, or what are they referring to here? And in order to understand that, I think it's important to look at how different ideas spread, and what was this Pali text like representing, or where was it brought from? And so like this is another screenshot from a very cool video, although it is by Business Insider, and they don't have put references for the historical sources of information, but at least at different places wherever I have read, it seemed more or less accurate, the things that they have represented in this video. So this is like Hinduism was there. Like it started in around whatever 2000 or between 3000 and 2000 BC. And while it was contained here after Gautam Buddha was born somewhere here, which is, I think, modern day Nepal, as Kento was saying. So after that, as he grew up, he then was probably inspired from these widespread ideas or values which were there in this Hinduism culture. And from there, he probably made his own interpretations and different and but probably the values were somewhat similar, and that's how the Buddhism spread. And like this is just a part of it, and then it spread to even further longer distances. So that is probably where Pali texts are coming from. Like that is the preservation of those values or ideas from there. So then probably we should talk about like what those ideas are, and in order to understand like better Pali text as well as the ideas communicated in them, which is especially when we are focusing on the word Sati. So Sati has its roots in the word Smriti in Sanskrit. And in ancient India, all of these, there's a vast knowledge system organization, and broadly it is divided into two different types called Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is mainly information with or knowledge, which is it is said that it is first-hand knowledge or universal truths. I don't know that how they were obtained, or like it's unclear what are its origins or who came up with them. But it seems like it was collective knowledge, like people probably observed the nature and tried to understand what it means. Like as far as I know about these different Shruti-based texts, they have verses which talk about natural things like air or sunlight and why they are important, and appreciating those, like they are so important for life forms, and so we should appreciate them, or we should be not really, I don't want to use word mindful, but yes, we should appreciate them. So and then Smriti is further, it is like something that we should remember these things. So Smriti is the Sanskrit word that means remembered or to remember again, which is similar to Sati. And it is a remnants of the case. It is the remnants of this knowledge. So and as you can see, like this is a lot of different forms of literature present in ancient India in different forms. And so basically this is somewhat a human analysis of this information. Like it is adding more, making it simpler for people in the community to understand through stories. For example, these Purans have different stories in the form of symbols or personified concepts, so that people can understand it more easily. So that is why, that is all Smriti.
So Smriti is like a knowledge system? Is it like a type of literature? Is that?
Yes. And also, like, it is a type of knowledge system, but specifically focusing on remember these things.
Remember Shruti?
Shruti is, yes, kind of.
Okay.
Remember Shruti. Like, remember the sayings of the Shruti.
Oh, I see.
So something like that. And so that is why it is then important to understand, like, what values does Shruti represent, so that we know that what we need to remember. What is it that we want to remember, so that and so then, like, Shruti has mostly the ancient literature in relation to Shruti is Ved. Like, a different name for Shruti is also called Ved. And Ved is just, it very simply means knowledge, and knowledge of truth. there, and this is like the root word in Sanskrit called vid. There's another Sanskrit and Hindi word called vidya, which is again knowledge, which is what very commonly used. So Ved is just this knowledge of truth, and it has a very comprehensive knowledge system about who are humans, what is their purpose, and then how can we achieve this understanding of ourselves. So could Smriti be considered a parable, story in prose verse? Yes, I mean, a part of Smriti, a part of the Smriti literature is definitely that, like the one that I talked about, Puran, is exactly a parable. Those are very vast literature and have huge number of stories just to represent these different concepts. And actually, because of that, there has been a lot of misinterpretations. People misinterpret it as different personified figures, and then they think that those were real persons and have misconceptions about them in modern day India. So that is why it is very interesting to actually look at those parables as parables, because they are just like whatever. They are stories to elucidate principles, but people forget those principles. They just remember the stories. But it is also this fact that they actually remember the stories, and it is then easier to go back to those principles because once they are more aware of what they represent. Yeah. So sorry. So yes, and Ved has different parts, a lot of different sorts of knowledge, including like this, what is the purpose of humans, and then how they can live their life, like the entire lifestyle, which is for their well-being, so that they can be eternally happy. Like that is sort of the purpose, in like the ultimate purpose of human life, to somewhere which is here or there we get to listen nirvana or like eternal bliss, those concepts. And but they are more elaborative in this Vedic literature. And then there is yoga is another part of the Vedic literature. It's not separate, it is again it is a part of it. And some people say that while Ved is the knowledge, yoga is the practice or the path to achieve those things. It is a system to achieve whatever has been explained in the Ved. And so yoga usually, I mean, now what I'm talking about is like how it is more embedded in everyday practices and how it is understood in the culture in from past and in the modern times. So yoga, like this is a definition that I learned in one of the training classes for yoga. And it was basically a teacher training class. So I was getting trained to become an assistant yoga teacher. And there we were taught that what yoga means, and it means this phrase, yoga chit vritti nirodha, which means that stilling or controlling the fluctuations of the mind. So in this Vedic literature, there's a lot of focus on mind or man. So this entire concept of man is so prevalent in Indian society that people would very commonly use phrases like for controlling your mind. Like they would just say, man shant karo. So shant is peace and man is mind. So you should calm down your mind, or things like that. Like those are very commonly spoken in every household. And also things like dhyan do. So dhyan is again it is a very deeply built concept, which is somewhat related to mindfulness, and or it is contemplative practice, but it somewhere it boils down to, again, being present in the moment. So like in every household, people or children are always told, "Dhyan se kaam kar, dhyan se khana bana." So that means do whatever you are doing mindfully. Even if you are eating, then do that mindfully. So all of those things, like, they are very much in the culture, like in everyday language. So and then this yoga even has like further different parts, and one of them, like, that we usually focus on, this dhyan or self-awareness, is just one part. Like, it's just this way of realizing the self, which is this path of knowledge called Gyan Yoga. And there could be others, like through devotion, which is Bhakti Yoga. So then it just means that be devoted, and in that process you would start to realize that whatever the ultimate truth is, or that knowledge is. And there is Karma Yoga, which means the root of actions. So in your actions, like, just be mindful so that you can learn this knowledge. So yeah, there are a lot of things, and then there are these so many different parts of even yoga itself, including dhyan, which is this meditative absorption, which is very commonly used as phrases in Indian households. And I just thought that I'll put up a short picture, because I think even Kento will be talking about different things in the Buddhist philosophy, which might be also related to these 8 limbs of yoga, which includes like the moral values and ethics, duties that we should do, as well as all other techniques for stabilizing and grounding oneself in these values. So yeah, it is a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And I'll pass over to Kento.
Do you want to keep going, or?
Well, I was wondering, because
Yeah.
I'm just, thank you so much.
This is just great. Like,
I mean, I've been in some of these worlds for quite a while and gotten bits and pieces, but I mean, I'm learning a lot. So I think, I can speak for many of us, and just, yeah, so thank you for starting to point us at some of those things. But I do think, to kind of offer space, maybe, we only have about 10 minutes left. I know I will need to leave pretty much at 10. So maybe we could just take some time to talk more about that. And then, whether it's next time or, sort of when, yeah, like to be able to continue and talk more about, sort of
yeah,
some of the other streams and,